Alright, partner, let's saddle up and ride into this incredible tale. Welcome to Saddle and Sixgun, where we dust off the forgotten stories of the Wild West, tales of grit, survival, and sometimes, the most unexpected acts of humanity. Do you like that? Now, before we get knee-deep in the sagebrush, if you're enjoying what you hear and this kind of storytelling tickles your fancy, mosey on down and give that like button a good old click. And if you reckon you'd like to hear more stories like this, tales that'll keep you thinking long after the sun dips below the horizon, then hit that subscribe button, so you don't miss a single adventure. Alright, let's get to it. Are you ready? It's 1869, Arizona Territory. Imagine a world where the line between survival and death is thinner than a razor's edge. A world consumed by hatred, where a person's skin color could determine their fate. Our story begins not with a clash of guns, but with a sight that would break any decent soul: two native children lying helpless on a dusty trail. A boy, barely 10 summers old, and his little sister, no more than 8. Their fragile chests barely rising, each breath a struggle. Fresh gunshot wounds mark their small bodies, wounds inflicted not by Apache arrows, but by army rifles. Can you believe it? Someone had shot these defenseless kids and left them for dead on this lonely mountain path. This path leads to the isolated herb cabin of Pamela Thompson. Now, Pamela is no ordinary woman. She is a pregnant herbalist, carrying new life within her own womb, and a woman known for her knowledge of healing with traditional, natural ingredients. But is this something she will be able to help? The Arizona desert sun beats down mercilessly, revealing crimson stains. These stains tells a story no woman, especially one carrying a child, should ever witness. Pamela Thompson, her hands instinctively protecting her 7-month swollen belly, stares down at the two small, motionless bodies. The boy's dark eyes flutter open with the glazed stare of death approaching. His sister lies completely still. Blood seeps through her torn doeskin dress, mixing with the red dust. I would want to turn away, wouldn't you? Every survival instinct screams at Pamela to turn away, to protect the life growing inside her. In this harsh territory, helping Apache meant signing a death warrant. But as the dying boy's trembling hand reaches toward her, something shatters in Pamela's chest. These aren't enemy warriors, are they? They are innocent children whose only crime was being born with the wrong skin color in a world consumed by racial hatred. Do you appreciate tales from the Old West? Do you enjoy our channel? If so, leave a comment and let us know. Pamela knelt beside the boy, ignoring the sharp pains shooting through her lower back. His fevered whisper comes in patchy words she can't understand. His desperate eyes speak a universal language of pleading. It's the same look she has seen in wounded animals before she healed them. Except this choice will determine whether she lives or dies as a traitor to her own race. Now, she has a decision to make, doesn't she? Without hesitation, Pamela lifts the unconscious girl, surprised by how weightless the child feels in her arms. The boy struggles to stand, leaning heavily against her leg as they begin the agonizing journey toward her cabin. Each step sends contractions through her pregnant belly. Reminders that her own body is already pushed beyond its limits. Do you think she will make it? Her small wooden cabin appears in the distance like a sanctuary. But Pamela knows it will become something far more dangerous once she brings Apache children across its threshold. It will become the place where a white woman committed the unforgivable sin of choosing compassion over racial loyalty. As they reach the porch steps, the little girl's eyes open for the first time. I don't think she knows what is going on. Beautiful dark eyes, but filled with terror when they focus on Pamela's pale face and blonde hair. The child tries to scream, but only a weak whimper escapes before she faints again from blood loss. Pamela carries both children inside, laying them on her own clean bed without a moment's hesitation. The white sheets immediately begin turning red, but her hands move with the practiced efficiency of a mountain healer. She has delivered babies, treated rattlesnake bites, set broken bones, and cured deadly fevers using nothing but herbs from her secret garden. The rifle bullet had torn through the boy's shoulder, missing vital organs, but causing dangerous bleeding and muscle damage. Can you believe it? The girl had been shot in her left thigh, the bone mercifully intact, but infection already begins to poison her bloodstream. Pamela works through the afternoon, using every healing secret her Cherokee grandmother had taught her. Every medicinal recipe passed down through generations of mountain women. As evening shadows lengthen, Pamela's own body begins betraying her. Now, if you are following along and loving the story so far, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Saddle and Sixgun. And be sure to give us a like. False labor contractions come on from stress and exhaustion. Sharp pains remind her she's risking not just her own life, but her unborn child's survival. She presses her hand against her belly, whispering desperate prayers to a God who seems to have abandoned this corner of the world. You can only imagine the agony and fear running through her. The boy opens his eyes as Pamela finishes binding his wounds with clean cloth strips. For the first time, he looks at her without fear. She realizes he understands exactly what her help means. He's old enough to know that white women don't usually risk everything to save Apache children from death. A sound that freezes Pamela's blood comes from outside her cabin walls. Are you nervous? Multiple horses approach fast. Their hoofbeats echo off the canyon walls like thunder announcing a storm. She extinguishes her oil lamp and creeps to the window, pressing her face against the cold glass. 6 riders emerge from the darkness, and Pamela's heart stops when she recognizes the lead horseman. Can you guess who this is? Jack Morrison, the territory's most feared Indian hunter, dismounts near her front door. Behind him ride men she knows from town, men who believe the only good Apache is a dead one, regardless of age or innocence. Morrison's heavy boots echo across her wooden porch like nails being hammered into a coffin. Pamela turns back to the children, whose eyes are now wide with terror despite their weakness. They understand the danger better than she does. They know what men like Morrison do to Apache children, even wounded ones clinging to life. 3 sharp knocks shatter the night's silence, demanding immediate response. Pamela smooths her blood-stained dress, checks to ensure no evidence is visible on her hands, and takes a breath that does nothing to calm her racing heartbeat. Can you imagine how nervous she must be? Morrison's cold blue eyes immediately begin scanning her cabin's interior when she opens the door. He has always been suspicious of her. A woman living alone in Apache territory. A woman who knows too much about healing and too little about proper submission to male authority. With mock politeness, Morrison tips his hat and explains they're tracking Apache raiders who massacred a settlement 20 miles south. What do you think Morrison is going to find? Children butchered, he claims. Women violated, homes burned to ashes. The survivors reported seeing wounded Apaches fleeing toward these mountains. Pamela forces her expression to remain neutral as Morrison describes the alleged massacre. She knows he's lying. The children in her bed bear wounds from army rifles fired at close range, not the defensive injuries one would expect from settlement raiders. These children were victims, not perpetrators. But Morrison's version will be the only truth that matters to territorial law. The interrogation stretches longer than Pamela's nerves can endure. Morrison's questions become more pointed, more suspicious. Why is she awake so late? Has she seen anything unusual? Would she object if his men searched the area around her property? Her false labor pains choose that moment to return with vengeance, doubling her over with agony she can't hide. Morrison's eyes narrow as he watches her struggle to remain standing, asking if she's ill, if she needs assistance. But his concern sounds calculating and false. Do you think she fools them? Through sheer willpower, Pamela convinces Morrison that she's simply experiencing normal late pregnancy discomfort. She assures him she has seen nothing, heard nothing, knows nothing about Apache raiders or wounded children or anything else that might interest territorial authorities. Morrison finally retreats, but not before warning Pamela to keep her doors barred and her rifle loaded. Can you imagine how scared she must be? Apache raiders, he says, are unpredictable and desperate when wounded. They might attempt anything, even approaching isolated cabins seeking medical attention. If she encounters any Indians, she should shoot first and summon help afterward. As the sound of horses fades into desert silence, Pamela collapses against her closed door. Alright, everyone. If you are enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Now, back to the story. The children are staring at her from the bed. Their dark eyes reflecting understanding far beyond their years. They know she has just lied to protect them. They know she has just placed herself in mortal danger for two Apache children whose names she doesn't even know. The older boy whispers something in his native tongue. Words that sound like gratitude mixed with urgent warning. Will they be able to survive? Pamela needs no translation to understand his message. Morrison will return. Men like him always return. And next time, he might not be satisfied with questions and threats. Pamela returns to her patients, checking their wounds by candlelight. Adjusting bandages, forcing herbal tea between their lips to fight infection and fever. So caring. Even as she works, her mind calculates time, distance, and impossible choices that will determine whether they all live or die. The children are too weak to travel anywhere. Moving them now will kill them as surely as leaving them on the trail. But keeping them here means living with constant terror of discovery. Knowing that every approaching hoofbeat might bring death for all three of them. Oh no! As the first pale light of dawn creeps through her window, Pamela makes a decision that surprises even her. She won't simply heal these children and send them back to a world determined to destroy them. She will protect them, hide them, fight for them if necessary. She'll become something she never imagined. A white woman who chooses Apache children over her own survival. Can you believe this? First, she needs to discover who these children are and why someone tried to murder them. The boy's fever is breaking, and soon he'll be strong enough to tell his story. Pamela senses that story will shatter everything she thought she understood about the war consuming this blood-soaked territory. The sound that shatters Pamela's exhausted sleep isn't hoofbeats or gunshots or men shouting orders. It's the sound of children weeping. But not the Apache children in her bed. Oh my! These are different voices. Distant voices that make her soul tremble with recognition of impending doom. Pamela rushes to her window and witnesses a sight that turns her blood to ice. 50 Apache warriors sit motionless on their warhorses. They are in perfect formation surrounding her cabin. What will happen now? At their center, mounted on a magnificent black stallion, sits a man whose presence commands absolute silence, even from the desert wind itself. Iron Eagle, the most feared Apache war chief in the entire territory. The man whose name is spoken only in whispers by the bravest souls. The man whose children, Pamela suddenly realizes with crystal clear terror, are lying in her bed. Recovering from wounds inflicted by white soldiers. Wow! The children in her cabin have stopped crying and are now sitting up despite their weakness. Their young faces filled with joy and fear in equal measure. The boy is trying to call out to his father in Apache. But his voice remains too weak to carry beyond the cabin walls. Do you think he can hear? Pamela stares down at her hands. Still stained with the blood of children she saved without knowing their true identity. She has healed the sons of the most dangerous warrior in all Apache Nation. She gave medical aid to the children of a war chief who swore sacred oaths to drive every white settler from this land or die in the attempt. Has Pamela made the right choice? And now Iron Eagle has come to reclaim what belongs to him. Pamela steps onto her porch. Her 7-month pregnant belly is clearly visible in the morning light. Her blonde hair shining like a beacon against the dark wood of her cabin. She stands alone and completely defenseless before 50 of the most skilled warriors in the Apache Nation. Knowing that her next heartbeat might be her last. This can't be good. Iron Eagle dismounts from his warhorse with fluid grace, his powerful frame moving with the controlled precision of a natural predator. His piercing dark eyes never leave Pamela's face as he approaches step by step, each footfall bringing them closer to a confrontation that will test everything she believes about courage, mercy, and the slim possibility of justice in a world consumed by hatred. Oh my goodness! I hope you are ready for more. If you have made it this far, please take the time to subscribe to Saddle and Sixgun. I want to see more stories. The other warriors remain statue still on their mounts, but Pamela can feel their eyes calculating her every breath, judging her every movement, waiting for their chief's signal that will determine her fate. Some grip rifles, others hold traditional weapons, all of them ready to act instantly on Iron Eagle's command. Wow, can you imagine what must be going through her head at this point? Pamela's trembling hands instinctively move to protect her unborn child, but she forces herself to stand straight and meet Iron Eagle's penetrating gaze without flinching. Whatever happens in the next few seconds will be decided in the space between heartbeats. In the eternal moment when an Apache war chief looks into the eyes of a white woman who risked everything to save his children from death. Can you believe this? Iron Eagle moves 3 steps closer to Pamela. Obsidian eyes study her face with predatory intensity. The silence between them carries more weight than any spoken threat. His powerful chest rises and falls with controlled breathing, each exhale visible in the cool morning air like smoke from barely contained fire. Behind him, 50 Apache warriors remain motionless on their warhorses. They are creating a semicircle of death around the tiny cabin. Their weapons glint in the dawnlight, but their eyes never leave their chief, waiting for the single gesture that will determine whether this pregnant white woman lives or dies. Pamela's legs threaten to buckle beneath her swollen belly, but she forces herself to remain standing. Her unborn child kicks violently inside her womb, as if sensing the danger that surrounds them both. False labor pains shoot through her abdomen, reminders that stress could kill her baby, even if these warriors do not. The sound that breaks the deadly silence comes from inside the cabin. What could this be? The wounded boy is trying to speak, his weak voice calling out in Apache to the man who stands like a living statue outside. Iron Eagle's head tilts slightly, listening to words that Pamela can't understand, but recognizes as desperate pleas from a son to his father. Without warning, Iron Eagle moves past Pamela and enters her cabin. What happens now? His presence fills the small space like storm clouds gathering strength, making the walls seem to shrink around his commanding frame. He approaches the bed where his children lie recovering, and for the first time since his arrival, raw emotion flickers across his stone-carved features. The little girl opens her eyes and whispers something in Apache, something that makes Iron Eagle's jaw tighten with barely controlled fury. Not fury at his children, but at whatever force brought them to this broken condition. He is a caring father. His massive hands, hands that could crush a man's throat without effort, touch his daughter's fevered forehead with the gentleness of falling snow on desert sand. Pamela watches from the doorway as this feared war chief examines the bandages she has applied, the herbal poultices she used to draw poison from infected wounds, the careful stitching she has done to close torn flesh. Are the kids okay? His fingers trace the clean edges of her medical work with something that might be respect, though his expression remains unreadable as carved granite. The boy struggles to sit up despite his weakness, speaking rapidly in his native language, while pointing at Pamela with trembling hands. So precious. She doesn't need translation to understand he is telling his father about her care, about how she risked everything to save their lives when she could have left them to die like abandoned animals. But she also catches the fear in his voice, the terror that his rescue might have doomed his savior to a fate worse than death. How would you feel in this situation? Iron Eagle stands slowly, his full height seeming to touch the cabin ceiling, and turns to face Pamela. When he speaks, his voice is deep and rough, like distant thunder rolling across canyon walls before a violent storm. His English is perfect, learned from years of dealing with white traders and soldiers. But it carries the weight of a man unaccustomed to explaining himself to anyone. For words only escape his lips, but they carry the force of moral judgment that cannot be appealed or overturned. Soldiers shot children hunting. The story that follows hits Pamela like repeated physical blows to her already aching body. His children had been hunting rabbits near the abandoned Spanish silver mine, playing in the desert sun like children everywhere, when a patrol of soldiers discovered them. Awful. They are not Apache warriors engaged in battle, not raiders threatening settlements. Just two innocent children chasing desert cottontails through sagebrush and redstone formations. The soldiers had shot them for sport, laughing as they fell bleeding onto the desert floor, then left them to die like wounded animals whose suffering provided entertainment for men whose hearts had turned to stone. Can you imagine the pain of losing a child? His son had crawled for hours across burning sand, carrying his unconscious sister. They continued until they both collapsed on the trail where Pamela found them drawing their final breaths. The injustice of this revelation makes Pamela's stomach turn with nausea that has nothing to do with pregnancy complications. These are not the children of raiders or warriors engaged in territorial battles. They are innocent victims of men who killed for pleasure. Men who saw Apache children as nothing more than moving targets for rifle practice during boring patrol duties. Iron Eagle continues speaking. His voice never rises above conversational level, but somehow becomes more dangerous with each carefully chosen word. He explains that he has been tracking his missing children for 2 days and nights without rest, following their blood trail across miles of unforgiving desert terrain. This can't be easy on him. He had expected to find their bodies. He had prepared himself emotionally to carry home their remains for proper burial according to Apache traditions. Instead, he found them alive, healing, cared for by a white woman. A woman who had every reason to let them die and save herself from the complications their rescue would inevitably bring. A woman who had endangered herself and her unborn child to save 2 Apache children she didn't even know. 2 children whose names she had never heard spoken, whose tribal connections she couldn't have understood. This act of mercy has created what his people call a sacred debt. A spiritual. Do you enjoy listening to stories from the Old West? Is Saddle and Sixgun your cup of tea? If so, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Bond that can't be broken by tribal law, personal preference, or the racial hatred that consumes this blood-soaked territory. According to Apache tradition, she is now under his protection, whether she wants such a dangerous alliance or not. Iron Eagle's next words carry a deadly promise that echoes across the morning air like sacred vows spoken before ancient spirits. Sacred debt, protection given, blood for blood if harm comes. Before Pamela can respond to this overwhelming declaration, the sound of approaching horses shatters the morning stillness like breaking glass. Not Apache horses this time, whose hoofbeats move with the controlled rhythm of warriors who understand stealth, but the heavy thunder of cavalry mounts moving at full gallop across desert hardpan. Oh no, is this bad? Iron Eagle moves to the window with liquid grace that seems to defy his impressive size. His trained eyes count riders and weapons with the efficiency of long experience in warfare. What he sees through the glass makes his expression harden into something approaching grim satisfaction, as if he has been expecting exactly this development. He is prepared. 35 soldiers in blue uniforms are riding hard toward the isolated cabin, their horses lathered with sweat from the desperate pace their officers have demanded. At their head rides a man whose gold insignia marks him as an officer of significant rank. Someone with authority to make decisions that could affect the lives of everyone present. Behind the military column ride Jack Morrison and several of his Indian hunters. Civilian scout bounty men whose faces show the savage excitement of wolves closing in for a kill. Iron Eagle turns back to Pamela. In that crucial moment, she sees him make a decision that will change everything for both of them. He could disappear into the desert landscape with his warriors, using Apache knowledge of terrain to vanish like morning mist before the soldiers arrive. What will he do? Instead, he chooses to stand his ground, creating a confrontation between Apache warriors and American cavalry that can only end in bloodshed. The soldiers form a battle line 40 yards from the cabin. They're close enough for their rifles to be devastatingly effective, but far enough away to avoid the immediate threat of Apache arrows. The positioning shows military training and battlefield experience, suggesting these are not green recruits, but seasoned fighters who survived previous encounters with hostile Indians. It's a standoff. The officer dismounts with parade ground precision and walks forward under a white flag of truce. Though everyone present understands how quickly such diplomatic gestures can be abandoned when violence seems more profitable than negotiation. His approach is confident, almost arrogant. This can't be good. A swagger of a man who believes superior firepower guarantees favorable outcomes. Colonel William Harrison introduces himself with military formality that barely conceals underlying contempt. His voice carries the absolute authority of a man accustomed to unquestioning obedience from subordinates and civilians alike. He demands to know why Apache warriors are surrounding a white woman's cabin. What possible business they could have in territory claimed and controlled by the United States government. Iron Eagle steps onto the porch beside Pamela. His presence immediately shifts the balance of power in the standoff, like adding gunpowder to smoldering coals. He speaks in clear, precise English that surprises Harrison with its educated sophistication, addressing the military officer with the natural dignity befitting a war chief, but without any trace of expected difference. A true leader. His response is economical, containing no wasted words, but carrying implications that make every soldier within hearing distance shift uncomfortably in their saddles. Children shot by soldiers found healing here. Woman under tribal protection now. Colonel Harrison's face flushes with anger at the implication that his soldiers would shoot children without military justification or direct orders from superior officers. He can't believe it. He demands proof of these serious accusations. Evidence that Apache children have been anywhere near Army positions during recent patrol activities. But his protests sound increasingly hollow as he speaks. Everyone present can hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. What follows escalates with dangerous speed toward violence that will leave bodies scattered across the desert sand. But Morrison whispers urgently in Harrison's ear like a serpent offering poisonous advice to someone whose judgment is already compromised by prejudice and career ambitions. Whatever. Have you told your friends and family about the stories here on Saddle and Sixgun? Morrison suggests, makes Harrison's expression grow darker and more suspicious with each passing moment. The accusation, when it finally comes, hits Pamela like a physical blow that nearly knocks her off her feet. Despite her determination to remain standing, Morrison claims she has been providing intelligence information to Apache raiders. That she is helping them plan attacks on isolated settlements and Army patrols by sharing details about military movements and defensive weaknesses. This is bad. According to Morrison's twisted logic, the wounded children are proof of her collaboration with enemy forces. Evidence that she is a traitor to her own race. He thinks that she deserves whatever punishment military justice deems appropriate for such betrayal. The charges carry penalties up to and including execution by military tribunal. Oh no! Colonel Harrison seizes on this explanation with obvious relief, recognizing it provides simple answers to complex questions. Complex questions that might otherwise require uncomfortable investigations into his soldiers' behavior. With the satisfied expression of a man who has found exactly the excuse he needs, Harrison orders his soldiers to arrest Pamela immediately for treason against the United States government. Iron Eagle's response is immediate and absolutely lethal. His warriors raise their weapons in perfect unison. They are creating an impenetrable wall of rifle barrels and arrow points aimed directly at the soldiers' hearts. The war chief's voice when he speaks carries the promise of death for anyone who tries to harm the woman who saved his children. This isn't good at all. One word only escapes his lips. It resonates across the desert landscape like thunder announcing the approach of a deadly storm that will spare no one caught in its path. No. For several heartbeats that seem to stretch into eternity, the two forces face each other in perfect balance. Each waiting for the other to make the first aggressive move that will transform the desert morning into a battlefield littered with bodies and soaked with blood. A tense situation. 50 Apache warriors against 35 cavalry soldiers. With Pamela and her unborn child caught in the crossfire between cultures that have forgotten how to resolve differences without violence. Something has awakened in Pamela during her time healing Iron Eagle's children. Something that will surprise her as much as it would have shocked anyone who knew her as a quiet mountain woman who avoided confrontation whenever possible. She has discovered that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the conscious choice to act righteously despite overwhelming terror. She has found reserves of strength she never knew existed within her supposedly fragile frame. She steps forward again, placing herself directly between the two armed forces with their fingers on triggers. Her pregnant belly making her vulnerability impossible for anyone to ignore. So dangerous. She speaks to both groups with authority that comes not from military rank or tribal tradition. She is simply speaking with the moral certainty that transcends racial boundaries and political affiliations. Her voice carries across the morning air with surprising strength as she addresses the fundamental injustice of the situation. She tells them she'll go with the soldiers voluntarily. That she'll face whatever charges they choose to bring against her in whatever court or tribunal they select. What will happen now? She demands that Iron Eagle's children be allowed to recover fully before any further discussions take place about their fate. The children's wounds are still healing, she explains. Moving them prematurely could cause fatal complications that would turn her life-saving efforts into instruments of death. Wow, she sure is brave. As a healer, she can't allow such medical negligence. Regardless of the political implications her treatment might have created. The compromise she proposes is elegant in its simplicity, but dangerous for everyone involved. She'll surrender herself to military custody, accepting whatever fate awaits her in exchange for safe passage for Iron Eagle and his warriors. It is so selfless of her. The children will remain in her cabin under the care of an Apache medicine woman Iron Eagle will send to continue their treatment. Colonel Harrison agrees to these terms with obvious reluctance, recognizing that any other choice will likely result in a massacre that will bring unwanted attention from territorial authorities. What will the army decide to do? Iron Eagle's acceptance of the proposed arrangement comes with warnings that echo across the desert silence like sacred promises that will be kept regardless of consequences. Harm comes to protected woman. Apache Nation considers act of war. Blood payment required until honor satisfied. As Pamela gathers a few personal belongings from her cabin under the watchful eyes of soldiers eager to complete their arrest, she feels the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. It's an overwhelming responsibility. She is leaving behind the only home she has known as an adult, walking toward an uncertain future that might end with her execution for treason against a government she has never betrayed. As she looks one final time at the two Apache children sleeping peacefully in her bed, their wounds healing cleanly under her careful treatment, she knows with absolute certainty that she would make the same choice again if faced with similar circumstances. Some actions transcend politics and warfare and racial hatred. Some decisions are simply about choosing life over death, hope over despair. Iron Eagle appears beside her as she prepares to leave with the soldiers who will determine her fate. Without words, moving with the quiet grace that marks him as a natural leader, he places a small leather pouch in her hands. So touching. His explanation is brief but carries profound meaning for someone who understands that survival often depends on help from unexpected sources. The pouch contains sacred herbs from Apache medicine women. The herbs are from plants that grow only in hidden canyon places where ancient spirits still watch over their people. If she ever needs healing that ordinary medicine can't provide, if she ever faces danger that her own strength can't overcome, she should burn these herbs and remember that she has friends in the vast desert wilderness. This is a thoughtful gift. The gesture touches something deep in Pamela's heart. Something that has nothing to do with gratitude or obligation, but everything to do with human connection that transcends artificial boundaries. For just a moment, looking into Iron Eagle's dark eyes, she sees not an Apache war chief or an enemy of her people. She is simply a father grateful that someone has saved his children's lives, when death seemed certain. As the soldiers escort her away from the cabin toward military justice that might prove more dangerous than Apache justice, Pamela turns back once to see Iron Eagle standing on her porch. He watches her departure with an expression she can't quite read. It is something between sorrow and determination. It is almost as if he is already planning actions that will either save her life or avenge her death. Behind him, Apache warriors begin melting away into the desert landscape like shadows dissolving at sunrise. But Pamela knows they aren't really disappearing. They are positioning themselves for whatever comes next. Preparing for possibilities that range from peaceful resolution to warfare that will consume the entire territory in flames of revenge. The ride toward the military fort consumes most of the day. It gives Pamela time to contemplate how compassion has set these events in motion. The Apache nation watches in the distance. She has saved 2 Apache children and gained protection from their war chief father. She also has made herself a target for men like Morrison. These men see any kindness toward Indians as evidence of treachery deserving the harshest punishment. The military escort moves at a punishing pace across desert terrain that offers no mercy to pregnant women. That can't be safe. Every jolt of wagon wheels over rocks sends shooting pains through Pamela's back and abdomen. Reminders that her body is already pushed beyond safe limits by advanced pregnancy and emotional stress. Sitting in the military wagon with her hands bound and her future uncertain, feeling her unborn child moving restlessly within her womb, Pamela experiences something unexpected growing in her heart. But not fear or regret for choices made, but a strange kind of peace that comes from knowing she has acted according to her deepest moral convictions, regardless of personal cost. What an outlook! What a fantastic story! Be sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. See you next time. The military fort appears on the horizon like a monument to territorial control. Its wooden walls and guard towers designed to project strength across a landscape that had known freedom before boundaries divided what was once whole. As Pamela faces the unknown consequences of her choices while fighting to keep her child alive inside her failing body, she carries Iron Eagle's promise and sacred herbs, connecting her to unexpected allies in the vast desert that stretches beyond any fort's ability to control. The iron shackles around Pamela's wrists have worn raw wounds during her first day imprisoned in the fort's makeshift cell. But something unexpected happens as she stares at those bleeding marks. She realizes she is no longer the frightened woman who once avoided confrontation at any cost. Prison isn't breaking her. It is forging her into something harder. The cell is a converted storage room with hastily welded bars and a reinforced door that blocks most natural light. Her pregnant belly makes every position uncomfortable on the thin straw mattress. But discomfort has become her teacher, showing her reserves of strength she never knew existed. We can all learn from Pamela's amazing story. Through the barred window, Apache smoke signals rise from distant canyon walls at dawn. They disappear at sunset. Thin columns carrying messages in a language older than any white settlement. The signals aren't random. They are Iron Eagle keeping his promise. Watching, waiting, preparing. She understands that her rescue won't come from begging or hoping. It will come from her own actions coordinated with his silent protection. The contractions have returned stronger than before. But now Pamela recognizes them as her body preparing for what might be her child's birth in this terrible place. She presses her hand against her swollen abdomen. Not in fear, but in determination. This child won't be born in captivity if she can prevent it. The leather pouch containing Iron Eagle's sacred herbs presses against her side like a heartbeat of its own. Hidden in her dress lining during rough searches, the pouch represents more than medicine or spiritual comfort. It is communication. A signal that can coordinate rescue when the moment comes. But first, she needs to understand her enemies and turn their weaknesses against them. How will she accomplish this? Harrison thinks he holds absolute power, but absolute power makes men careless. Morrison believes fear controls everything, but fear can be reversed against those who wield it carelessly. She begins watching guard schedules, listening to conversations, learning who among her captors might be turned against the others. Colonel Harrison's boots echo in the corridor, approaching with news that will change everything. He enters her cell with supreme confidence, his immaculate uniform reflecting a man who believes he controls life and death within his command boundaries. She now sees something different in his cold eyes. She doesn't see strength, but desperate ambition that will be his weakness. Morrison follows behind like a hunting dog. He is eager for blood, and whispering poison in his commander's ear. They need her death to be legal, which means they fear consequences from higher authorities. His plan is falling apart. She realizes their desperation means she holds more power than they want to admit. Harrison announces her trial will begin within hours. A military tribunal of 3 officers under his direct command. These men's careers depend on pleasing their superior rather than pursuing justice. The charges are treason, collaboration with hostile forces, providing aid to enemy combatants. Wow, this isn't looking good. As Harrison outlines his fabricated evidence, Pamela makes mental notes of every lie, every contradiction, every piece of testimony that can be turned against him. This could work if she survives long enough to reach authorities who might actually care about truth. The trial is conducted in the fort's main meeting room with Harrison presiding over proceedings that ignore every principle of military law. Everyone has an agenda. Witnesses testify to crimes Pamela has never committed. They are describing activities that exist only in Morrison's imagination and Harrison's career ambitions. When they allow her to speak, Pamela surprises everyone by standing with dignity that commands attention. This is despite her shackles and pregnant condition. Her voice carries across the room with unexpected strength as she addresses not the corrupt tribunal, but the young soldiers witnessing this travesty. She speaks directly to their consciences, describing the wounded children she found dying on the trail, shot by soldiers for entertainment. She watches their faces change as they recognize the truth behind the lies. She has gotten to them. Several enlisted men shift uncomfortably as she details the medical evidence of point-blank rifle wounds on innocent children. Some look away. They are unable to meet her eyes. Others nod slightly, acknowledging what they know to be true. It is as if their own consciences are attacking them. The guilty verdict is predetermined. Pamela has accomplished something more valuable than acquittal. She has planted seeds of doubt and moral conflict that will bloom when Iron Eagle's rescue attempt begins. As guards escort her back to the cell to await execution at sunset, she notices which soldiers avoid eye contact, and which meet her gaze with something approaching respect. Those distinctions will matter when the fighting starts. People are starting to pick sides. Through her cell window, she sees Apache warriors moving openly on the surrounding ridges. They are no longer hiding their presence. Iron Eagle's warriors appear on the hills like ghosts materializing from desert air. They are not attacking, but simply existing where everyone can see them. Now if you are finding this as amazing as me, why not subscribe and give Saddle and Sixgun a thumbs up. 50 Apache fighters are positioned to demonstrate that the fort is surrounded. The fort is outnumbered, and outmaneuvered by enemies who choose when to reveal themselves. The psychological effect on Harrison's garrison is immediate and devastating. Soldiers who have felt secure behind wooden walls now understand they are trapped in a box. Iron Eagle is doing more than military intimidation. His positioning tells a story that even white soldiers can read. Apache warriors are on every high point. The escape routes are blocked, and the supply lines are cut. The message is clear. Surrender the woman or face annihilation. Harrison's response reveals his true character under pressure. Instead of negotiating or considering tactical withdrawal, he orders increased brutality toward his prisoner. He threatens to execute any soldier who shows weakness or sympathy toward Apache demands. But his harsh orders create the opposite effect he intended. Young men who have joined the army to defend innocent civilians are questioning why they're executing a pregnant woman who saved dying children. They are turning on him. The moral contradictions are becoming impossible to ignore. Private Mitchell approaches Pamela's cell during the confusion of preparing defenses against Apache attack. His boyish face shows the strain of choosing between military loyalty and human decency. But his whispered words reveal which side is winning. He is on Pamela's side. He says, "Ma'am, some of us know what really happened to those children. We know you're